Poshmark has rolled out 3 updates that affect your listings as well as your sales. So let's jump into it and talk about how this affects you. Update 1, there's a new way to get discovered. What this means is that discovery is made more personalized for the buyer, and they are shown things based on relevance, interest, or their shopping behavior, as opposed to previously, we had as the seller to share our closets multiple times a day to refresh the listings so that it would be at top of mind if a buyer was looking for it. This is actually a really good thing for you because this means that when you post an item, you don't have to be there actively on the Poshmark platform relisting or resharing your closet multiple times a day.
Oh my sweet Jesus. That's rad.
This means your item is going to be placed in front of buyers who are actually interested based on their behaviors on the platform. In this update article, right here, I will leave below in the YouTube description for you if you'd like to read it. But they also mentioned that they wanted to highlight items sold, last activity, and average shipping times. Although they did highlight average shipping times in your About section, the other ones I'm not entirely sure about. I have yet to see this update, but I have been keeping an eye out for it. Make sure you're subscribed because as soon as I do have updates or new things, I will be making videos on that. So update 2 is the delete and relist behavior. What this means is they don't want the excessive deleting and relisting of an item without making any changes. Previously, as a seller, I was taught as well, every 30 to 60 days to delete your item and relist it to refresh the item in the feed. Now, in the first update, we talked about how Poshmark made your item more discoverable to a buyer based on their interest. So this delisting and relisting behavior does not need to happen, and they also want to avoid a spammy behavior. But I want to be clear, what's still okay is for you to delete the item and relist it and update the photos, the title, the description, anything else that you need to update, or if there's a mistake that you made, that is totally fine. Like I said, what is risky is the delete, relist, and not changing anything about the listing. Here's the article where they explain all these new policy updates, and I will actually leave it down below in the description for you so you can read this as well yourself. I want to particularly highlight the remove listings when they're no longer available. If your item sells elsewhere, meaning if you sell on eBay, Mercari, Depop, other platforms, or it is out of stock, you can delete it from Poshmark. They're not penalizing you for deleting a listing or an item that you don't have. They're penalizing you down here, which says what they're discouraging is excessive deletion and relisting of the same item within or fewer than 60 days. So if you're someone who cross-lists to other platforms, that is totally okay. And cross-listing is allowed on Poshmark. On Poshmark. What they don't want is to use the apps or the tools within some of these platforms where you can delete or relist items and have that spammy-like behavior. Update 3 is seller-initiated cancellations. So just to be clear, this is if seller initiates it. If the buyer decides to cancel, that is totally okay. If your item is delivered and for some reason it is being returned because of a mistake that you made on your end, that is also okay. Here in this article is where they mention what I'm about to talk about. I'll leave the link below in the YouTube description for you. Here it says, as long as order cancellations are no more than 3% of your total orders within a rolling 90-day period, your account standings will not be impacted. So this means if you have one cancellation, it is not the end of the world. But what it means is if you have repetitive cancellations because you can't find items or you're out of stock, and it's your fault, then you could be penalized for the cancellations. So as a seller, even if you are part-time or casual, it's your responsibility to know where the item is when you store and also that it is as described when you're selling the item. Make sure the size is correct, make sure you're descriptive in the detail if there's any flaws. That way you don't get a return, but also that way you don't have to cancel the item if someone orders it so it doesn't hurt your account. But bottom line, cancellations do happen, so don't freak out. So now you learned the 3 updates that Poshmark made. Now, because of these updates, they cause 6 effects throughout Poshmark that can affect your listings and your sales. So let's get into those effects of these updates. The effect 1 is buyer engagement matters more. So this is a result to update 1, what we talked about earlier, since they're putting more weight on what the buyer's interests are or their behavior on the platform. So if they are clicking on your item, liking your item, or sending offers, that might be an indicator to Poshmark that this is a popular item that other buyers might be interested in as well. Now, this is not written word for word in the engagement update. This is just an effect you can kind of assume that happens with the discovery phase, since it is based on the buyer's actions on the platform. Effect 2 is the title structure is simpler. So because of update 1, we can think or assume that the discovery of the titles is more relevance based. So it's less keyword heavy and more how a person would type it in when they're searching for it. So for example, this is what the keyword stuffing old style title would sound like. J. Crew sweater, women's large, blue striped, cable knit, cashmere, long sleeve, crew neck, boho, casual fall. So you would add all of that in there as well as style aesthetic keywords. Now, the cleaner version is J. Crew blue striped, cable knit, cashmere sweater. All those extra words are out.
Oh, this is so much easier.
It's cool, right?
Words or things that are also in the category section, because in Poshmark you do also list the size, and then you can also list tag words in there as opposed to putting them in the title. Now, this doesn't mean SEO is dead. It just means the title doesn't need to have all the keywords and everything stuffed in it, and it doesn't have to carry all the weight of the item in there. Something I'm starting to think about when I'm doing it is if a buyer would search it, I'd put it in the title, but if it's something that a buyer wouldn't necessarily search for majority of the time, then I'm going to leave it out of the title. So effect 3. Sharing your closet. We did talk briefly about it in update 1, but sharing is not completely dead. You can still share your closet, refresh items, but also it is not weightedly heavily on the activity that you're performing on the app. It's based on what the buyer is actually interested in. If you are sharing your items and the photos are bad, or the pricing is too high that no one would buy it, or if it's a low demand item or it's a saturated market, it's not going to help you to share the item over and over again. You're wasting your time. So from what I understand, sharing does help, but all the weight of sharing and making sure you share 3, 4, 6 times a day is not necessarily weighted as heavy now because of update 1. So effect 4, relisting still works with changes. So to be clear, relisting is not banned and it can still work if used effectively. If you do the delist, relist, delist, relist and don't make changes and the item doesn't sell, well, that's an indicator, 1, that the photo could be bad, the title's not good, maybe the item is not desirable, maybe there's too many flaws, maybe it's a saturated market. There's so many other things that go into play. So you want to make sure your item is the most appealing and can compete and stand out with other listings when people are scrolling through. And that way it also goes to the buyer who is most interested in it as well. So occasional relisting is good and can be good for your listings, but if you're doing it as a strategy to get your item found, it doesn't work like that anymore. Effect 5 is stale listings seem to sync faster. So based on update 1, if your item is not getting engagement or not showing interest, it can sync down because obviously it's indicating that buyers aren't interested in it, and Poshmark wants to make sales on the platform. So they're going to provide and share information or share listings that are going to get sold or they think or have a better chance of getting sold. Now, this does not mean that your listing is dead. This means you need to update your photo maybe, or change your title, or adjust your price. You can also send offers to likers. So the effect 6 that I see is a professional selling behavior. So what I mean by this is Poshmark doesn't expect you to be a full-time seller, but if you're doing this part-time and casually, they also want you to be active and reliable on the platform. They don't want a buyer to order something and then you have to cancel on buyers repetitively. They want to stop that behavior because that's frustrating to the buyer. They also want you to be more consistent with shipping. Shipping under 3 days is a good rule of thumb. things happen, you can obviously ship later on. Communicating with the buyer is very important when this happens. I've been out of town before and shipped on the 7th or 8th day, but nothing has happened because I communicated with the buyer. And I just want to make sure, and I'm clear, that this does not mean you have to be a full-time seller. It just means they want you to be reliable on the platform like a full-time seller would. You don't need to list every day if you don't want to. Listing does help with sales. You don't need to update your listings on a regular basis. But of course, after 90 days, 180, 1 year, if your listing hasn't sold, maybe you need to update something so it does sell. Now, with all this information, this doesn't mean you need to panic or you need to redo your whole closet overnight. I personally have not changed all my titles yet. I need to go through slowly and update the titles, and I'm not doing it all in one sitting. I do it over time because I'm a part-time seller, so when I'm watching TV or hanging out, that's when I'm doing my updates. All right, I wanna hear from you. What do you think about these updates? Do you like them? Do you not even notice them? Do you not like them? Share in the comments below. So back in 2019, when I joined Poshmark, it was more weighted on the activity that you did as a seller on the platform. And when I started, they did not have the bulk sharing option. So I would be laying there on my phone or on the computer and you'd have to share, 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 share. You had to go through each individual item and share it. That was so tedious. And you know how bad your fingers hurt after that if you were on your phone or even like clicking the mouse when you're on your computer? And it was so repetitive and so annoying to do. But if you didn't do it, then your listings would go stale and wouldn't refresh because Poshmark was meant to be more like a social app. So they wanted you to be very, very active on it. So personally, I am loving the new update, and I think it's a better way, especially once I transitioned from a full-time reseller when I was consistently on the app to just doing it part-time now and for fun. I don't need to spend money on apps. I don't need to share my closet consistently. I can rely on listing a quality item with a good photo, a good title, and filling in all the categories and everything. So that way it is given to or put in front of the buyer who is most interested in it. So I think it will be very good and in the long run, very good for people who are part-time or casual resellers who aren't active on the platform 24/7 or who don't want to share 3, 4, 5 times a day.